Hey YouTube, how's it going? So you may have watched my video about why you should tell your crush that you like them, and maybe you were inspired to do it and you did it and your crush didn't like you back. And maybe now you're like, well, Nika, I said it, I did it, now what should I do? Well, this is what this video is for. This is the follow-up to that video. Alright, so 3 things to do when your crush doesn't like you. That sounds so blunt, but it's reality. It's what happens. Some people like you, some people don't. You just gotta, you know, move past it, follow these tips, and just move on to better things. So, number 1 is to feel your emotions. Now, what do I mean by this? You just got rejected by someone you really were into and you were picturing a future with and you had high hopes for. So what are you gonna do now? So I understand that it doesn't feel good at all. I am the last person who's gonna tell you to pretend that you're okay, but just feel all your emotions in a healthy way. By healthy, I mean hang out with friends, vent to someone you trust, go for a walk out in nature, just breathe, meditate, feel it, let it all out. What I don't mean when I say feel the emotions is that stereotype of sitting in your room all alone, eating a bunch of junk food, watching a bunch of sappy movies, and just feeling terrible about yourself. I don't mean that at all. That's such a stereotype thing to do, but it's not productive at all. You want to acknowledge your emotions and feel it, but then move past it. Don't sit in it and marinate yourself in that sadness. Dealing with your emotions and how you feel about a situation doesn't mean locking yourself in a room until you feel numb about the situation. You confronted your feelings once by telling this crush that you liked them, so now you're confronting it again when you're feeling this sort of sadness about it. Like I said, it's important to acknowledge that it's there, but just don't drown yourself in it. I noticed that a lot of people who would watch these type of videos happen to be in high school, and I know there'll be a lot of people who tell you that you're too young to feel a certain way about someone, but to be honest, in my opinion, I would say the exact opposite, because I feel like I've developed really strong feelings in high school that were very mature compared to what people might think. I feel like I'm the last person to tell you that just because you're young, you're not feeling this sort of love for someone, but at the end of the day, if the person that you had intense feeling and love for rejects you, they're not worth your time anymore. It's gonna hurt to break them off, but it's the best thing that you could possibly do for yourself. Which brings me to my second point, actually. The second thing you need to do if you get rejected by your crush is to distance yourself from your crush. When I say distance yourself, I mean take a step back in terms of social media. I understand that there are cases where you were friends with this person and you don't want to stop being friends with them, but there's ways on social media to adjust settings so you're not exposed to their posts all the time. You could still be friends with someone on Facebook, but you could unfollow their timelines. No one's feelings gets hurt, but it allows you to move on past it in a more productive way. But if you want to make things easier on yourself and you weren't initially friends with this person, just take them out of all the social media. You need to distance yourself from them to get over them. That's just it. You're not gonna be able to open your eyes to other people if you're constantly being bombarded with all these posts and information and photos about this one person that you thought you were in love with. So it's so important to distance yourself. But with distancing yourself, I encourage you to not be bitter about it. I understand that maybe you're feeling angry or you're feeling really hurt by the situation and you're wondering, why didn't they like me back? But the way that I see it as a biologist is that there's so many like chemical and physical aspects when it comes to the attraction of two humans, and it just boils down to basic biology and chemistry. So it's like if someone just doesn't find you attractive, there's nothing you can do about it. I know that's a super blunt thing to say, but making that connection could maybe even help you move past people who don't feel the same way about you. At the end of the day, you can't force someone to like you, just as how someone you don't like can't force you to like them. So with this rejection, and I know that this isn't gonna come immediately after the rejection, but there needs to be some sort of acceptance there where you understand that it just boils down to the fact that there are certain biological mechanisms that make people attracted to each other, and you two just don't mesh in that system. That doesn't mean that no one's going to mesh with you. It just means that that's not the right person. So instead of trying to fight biology and fight everything and trying to prolong the pain, you gotta distance yourself, and there's gotta be a sort of acceptance about the situation. And with the acceptance, like I said, comes the avoidance of bitterness, which will just sap more energy from you, and that's what I'm trying to move you past. Also, another thing that's important with distancing yourself is to avoid relapse. And this is why I say that if you can help it, take him out of all social media, because if you're changing all your settings so you're not seeing their posts, but you still have access to all of their social medias, then you can jump into relapse where you might find yourself in the middle of the night just going through all their stuff again, and you find yourself in the exact place you were before all of this happened. And I don't want that for you either. This is gonna sound terrible, but if you find yourself relapsing and thinking about this person, just remember the rejection, and just remember how you felt about it, and how if that person rejected you, then they're not worth your time, and you should not give them any more of your time. So we are now finally at the third thing that you should do when your crush rejects you, and this is the most important one out of the three of them, and that is to focus on you. All the energy that you put into thinking about this crush and learning about them and thinking about ways to talk about them, all that energy that you put into not just even your crush but to other people, start putting it back into yourself. If your grades are low, make a goal to get the grades up. I can't stress enough how doing well in high school helps you out so much in college. If you feel like you've been unhealthy, start putting more time into research on better lifestyles and exercising. And most importantly, we are in a time where so many people have access to so much technology, where you can learn anything, you can pick up any hobby. I remember I really wanted to learn guitar, and I learned classical guitar off YouTube. No teacher. Find a skill, find a hobby that you've always wanted to do, and just throw yourself into it. I want you to just grow from this as much as you possibly can. And I want you to look back at this time and see it as a time where you took control of your life and you grew into a better person. A more better person than you already are. One thing that I feel like young people, especially young women, don't understand is that putting time in yourself and focusing on yourself and your life and your goals makes you a more attractive person to other people. That sense of passion and driven for something greater than yourself is something that's attractive to other people. I want you to think about what makes you happy, what lights up a fire inside of you, and just go for it. You're not too young to start your dreams. You're not too young to figure out what your passion is. And if you don't know what your passion is, just try everything. I was like that for a really long time, where I had no idea where my interests and passions lie, so I literally just threw myself into everything I possibly could, and now I have a bunch of random skills and a ton of friends from all of those disciplines. You never lose when you're putting yourself out there, in my opinion. At the end of the day, I feel like people can't love another person without loving themselves. If your crush isn't gonna give you the time of day, then you need to give yourself the time of day. At the end of the day, crushes come and go, man. They feel like such a big deal in that moment. But then a few weeks or months later after the rejection, you're all of a sudden moving on to someone else who you might find is even better than the last person. These crushes and rejections present themselves as obstacles to you to increase your personal growth. And that's a very valuable lesson to obtain, especially when you're young, because when you start growing up and entering adulthood, you're gonna grow up to be one of those adults who are able to handle a lot of situations that are thrown to them. At the end of the day, all I want for you guys is to be able to handle these sort of situations in the most healthiest way you possibly can, because these sort of situations aren't going to go away, and situations involving relationships especially don't often go the way you plan to go. Just make sure that you're practicing how to handle yourself in those situations, so like I said, you can live a more peaceful life. I hope all of this made sense to you guys. If you have any questions, just like the last video, leave it down in the comments and I'll try to address as many as I possibly can. And I will leave you with that. I'll see you guys in the next video.